So, welcome to the Middlemen. We had a discussion with Infillion at Possible. We talked with Jeremy Woodley, and he's talking about the reemergence of a brand that we all know as MediaMath under the Infillion umbrella. In the world of retail media, when I was at Quotient, we bought a DSP, and in the last couple of years, you have the trade desk, and that's one of the only options out there because they're the biggest. And when it comes to a retailer, do you need a DSP? And what is the point of the smaller DSPs? Is there a place for them?
What's interesting is, as someone who built a DSP and sold it to Outbrain, and it lives on within Outbrain, and I love DSPs, but the reality is anyone running a retail media program doesn't really need to understand what a DSP does and so forth, even though MediaMath was technically speaking a reasonable DSP.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that DSPs are, what you need to know, are the component that allows you to offsite media buys. And so retailers who build out retail media programs need a DSP. That's all you need to know. You don't really need to understand how they work, what they really do. Just know that it's a component of that. But what was interesting to me about Infillion is, it's trying to move into retail media. It's explicitly, as it's acquired MediaMath, as it's building it back out, as it's re-enabling it, it's specifically targeting retailers, and it's trying to move in that direction as being retail media focused. But to that point, what was interesting is they're seeing the need for more managed services, more end-to-end solutions. And as I think you and I know from our work with retailers, especially for tier 2 and tier 3, that is a huge gaping need.
Yeah.
The Silicon Valley calls these tech-enabled services, right? So
Yeah.
Infillion bought a DSP to provide these services, but we in the ad world have called them managed services. And I think that's going to be one of the interesting things here is what's old is new, because that's where Quotient started. And I think we're seeing a need
we
for
were
that
able
again.
to scoop up all the retailers because we had managed service, and that's what everybody wanted. And as much as the market and analysts told us you need to go self-service, and they awarded the best in the DSP world, I think it was Gartner or whoever it was, they said, oh, the ones who are going to win are the ones that have a self-service capability. Lo and behold, that wasn't really what the retailers needed.
Oh, especially tier 2 and tier 3 retailers. Yeah. And we say tier 2 and tier 3. We don't mean in terms of how good or bad they are. We mean in terms of size.
Yeah, I mean, retailers like HEB are beloved, but they're not as big as Amazon.
And they don't have the people to service the operation side of a retail media business or platform. And I think this is going to be a very interesting evolution. Is, again, what was old is new again. And right now in the market, it's Epsilon or bust, maybe a little bit of Criteo in some aspects, but if Infillion's willing to step in and move and then migrate their DSP to be something that can help manage onsite meaning the web property.
Yep.
The onsite pieces of it become really interesting. And so to me, it's like, where's the direction? Does Infillion want to go as this? Do they see the same opportunity? And in talking with Jeremy, it's clear that this is something that they think the market also needs. So it'll be really interesting to see the evolution in the marketplace. Do we see more end-to-end service providers and platforms emerge? I think that to me is what's interesting here. So if you're a retailer, you're going to have more than just Epsilon as an option. And Epsilon's a great platform. It's a very big platform, and there's a lot of pieces to it. And if it's not the fit for you, then what's your plan B? And that's not always so obvious right now. If you need a more service-oriented solution.
Yeah, I think the modularity of it is where it will get interesting, because if the policy of the platform is we're not doing in-store yet, that's a challenge. But if you're more modular, and I think we're going to hear a little bit about how Infillion MediaMath is working with, say, Walmart Mexico, they may want certain things. And I think if the MediaMath platform allows for customization and allows the retailer to invest in certain areas more so than others, that could be a great solution.
What's good about Jeremy Infillion is Jeremy is a long-time ad tech exec leader. He's got deep knowledge of the space. He and I go back from a business standpoint 15 years. And he's really a part of the OG ad tech world. We were joking at Possible that we need like the OG cabana at Possible at the Fontainebleau with smokers jackets, kind of like the SNL 5-time hosting club. For those of us who've been in the business for 15 or 20 years, you need something like that. So Jeremy has seen a lot and seen it all. And as he looks to rebuild MediaMath, it's an interesting perspective because Jeremy's coming to this with a very deep, similar to myself, of ad tech experience and understanding.
I think maybe Rob Beeler, who we saw at Possible, could figure out that connection with Beeler's Blazers. But I think that generally it was refreshing to hear Jeremy, and we'll get into it in a second. I've been waiting for the people from ad tech, and that was one of the reasons when we met, I was excited about our conversations, is the real hardcore people of ad tech to come into the retail media world. And I thought initially it was going to be, when those people came in, it was like, you're going to clear everybody out. And I think what's happening instead is that coming in with a level of humility. Look, we're taking this diamond in the rough like MediaMath, and we're going to bring it to you, but we're going to do it in a way that's collaborative. And so I think that's what was fun for me about this discussion.
I think there's some interesting perspectives as the two sides meet. We've talked about this. The retailers have been smart about bringing in ad tech people, and the ad tech people see the opportunity as retailers and publishers come together under sort of one broader umbrella. And there's going to be some really interesting opportunities to see how this business evolves. And also the buzz out of Possible is retail media is absolutely the future of online advertising. The growth in retail media interest and every new acquisition like Infillion buying MediaMath is, I think, a part of that. And that story is what we're going to hear more and more about. And it just was nice to see the evidence of that at Possible, where all the big retail media platform players had large presences. Walmart Connect had a big presence. Amazon Ads had a big presence. Rondell from Target had a big presence. And others, CVS, it had a big presence.
All of them. So let's get into it. Let's go to the Infillion suite at the Fontainebleau. We are here at Possible in Miami. We're at the Fontainebleau Hotel, and we're here with Jeremy Woodley from Infillion. Jeremy, we had a chance to meet up at Shop Talk, and that you had just joined, specifically focused on MediaMath. And I looked back and I saw some articles. So I think it was like it's been like around 2 years since MediaMath ran aground. Try to use some yachting metaphors here.
Well, let's go back to the story. Let's actually get the real story of how Infillion ends up with MediaMath. I'm not sure everyone knows the gritty details of that. So let's start with the story of how does MediaMath end up with Infillion.
I like that.
Because I think not everyone knows the story. They're aware of it, but and I think that's a good place to start.
Let's do it.
Yeah, and I was not there, so I'm a recent.
No, it's okay. You can, as best you know it, right?
As best I know.
As you know the lore, it's now like a lore versus actually this is a historical reality.
Yeah. So I think the right way to tell this story is Infillion is our CEO Rob Emmerich has bought a lot of ad tech companies over the years, that brands that we all know, like a Gimbal, a Drawbridge, a Truex, and has created a very unique combination.
So I didn't even know that
Infillion
had acquired Truex in the past.
Yeah,
that's good.
So all these assets that he's developed, he's bought and integrated into our common platform. It's just a little bit of a different approach to building an ad tech business. And I was at Google for a long time on their platform business, and they acquire businesses, but then integrated and created this thing. So the way Rob likes to work is what I've seen is he keeps his eye out. He likes to look for companies that are available for sale, that are complementary to what we have. So he was paying attention to MediaMath as that they went into bankruptcy, went through that process, and decided that they wanted to be a serious bidder for the assets, and went to bankruptcy court and did the thing. And just saw it as a tremendously a valuable platform that really never failed. There was no product flaw there. It was just some unfortunate financing and corporate development decisions that just didn't play out.
But a brand that was still worth something.
A brand that's worth something in the tech that was in very good shape.
Well, people refer. Last night we were talking. We heard that MediaMath was referred to as the smartest guys in the room. Is that still the case?
I would hope so. I like to think so. I joined because I believe in what it can be done with this platform. I think one of the things we're trying to be smart about is we're not trying to go do MediaMath 1.0. Like, we're trying to take the moment we're in and understand the context of what's happening in the industry, which is honestly like a lot of change and disruption, right? Like, there's a lot going on and in a way that I don't think I've seen since 2010 to 2012 when they emerged originally. So we're trying to take a fresh look at it and be smart about how we deploy it. So we're not going to go out and try to be the holdco's chosen DSP down that path. We're not going to be talking to the largest brands in the world. The first team did. We're looking for people that maybe are newer to the programmatic game, that want world-class technology, want somebody to return their calls and work with them and be flexible. We're looking at, I'm focusing on this, at companies that want to customize and compose what they want and not take something off the shelf and use it. So we're looking at it from a fresh eye. But yeah, we're trying to be really smart about it and trying to take the moment and go with it.
And I think part of the story too is, you mentioned you work at Google. That's not really your story. Your story, for those unaware, Jeremy and I have known each other probably for over a decade, maybe 15 years. You've been in the space a long time. Rob's been in the space a long time. We were joking about we need a little SNL 5-timers club for us 20-year guys in the ad tech space. And I think that's an interesting perspective in terms of MediaMath goes back as that part of that same generation. We grew up with the MediaMaths of the world, and to see a technology and a company that evolved, I think it's interesting. What's your perspective on looking at where ad tech has come from over the last 20 years in terms of where do you think it's going to go, and where do you think the opportunities lie? You mentioned, what is this new MediaMath 2.0 lens?
And we worked together. I was at Rubicon Project.
Yes. I was older.
Yes, one of the OG
yeah.
publishers really giving that a shot. It was fun. It was good times. I think that the spirit then is what I'm feeling now again. It's just that there's enough disruption and change about how the tech platforms are assembled and how much data is available, and then the accessibility of data, like particularly AI-based data, compute-based, cloud-based computing, that it's democratized access to technology and data in a way that a lot of people that 10, 15 years ago really had to leverage, like the big platforms in the middle, the walled gardens, the trade desks of the world, to be able to do clever things with programmatic advertising. You're getting it pushed back to the fringes, like back, not the fringe really, back out of the middle toward the edges of the business, toward publishers who have the ability to maybe be empowered, people who are building media businesses like retail media networks, and then toward the agencies and advertisers who are also principals. So I think that's what we think is interesting, is the sort of more openness that AI and data can drive around people being able to get their hands dirty and do clever things with programmatic and digital advertising. I think it's like the end of the first era of programmatic, in the sense like the walled gardens, the middle players made a lot of money, and rightfully so. They had good data, good tech, they executed on the first phase. But I think they're making a little too much money. The actual value creation in our industry is with publishers and with advertisers, right? Like, it's all about connecting the two. Like, they should both have more power and have a greater share of the upside in this business. So I think we're positioning ourselves as like being a tech vendor, a managed service vendor, to be able to like power that like moment.
So retailers are acting more as publishers, but in retail media, they need to do more. They have enough data. They need this modular approach that you're talking about. So talk to us about what the retail media opportunity is.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. We have a real amazing relationship with Walmart Mexico. We power the Connect platform down there, and we built from scratch with MediaMath as the foundation of their own self-service white-labeled UI and with unique features. Honestly, a lot of things pulled out that an agency buying their media doesn't need. So that experience has put us right in the middle, because we handle all their inbound advertising campaigns, even stuff that we don't serve directly. We take on-site advertising campaigns and push it to Google Ad Manager. We take the digital out-of-home and push it to the digital out-of-home vendor. What we've seen is like every retail media network, even the biggest of the bigs, like Walmart, have stitched together technologies and assets.
Yeah, it's kind of the dirty secret. It's never just a single platform.
Oh no, there's no such thing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like when you think about sci-fi. It's everybody uses the same platform and everything works. That's not how technology evolves.
No, it's not. Like you're using Cody for your ad server, and you're using Criteo for your on-site PLAs, and you're using Trade Desk for your off-site, and maybe you have another DSP. You're using MediaMath for a secondary off-site use case. It's all cobbled together, and it's done by a company that is relatively new to media, and it's messy.
But they want control.
Yeah, they want control, but they don't necessarily know how to have that control. And so there's a lot of outsourcing. I think AI agents will be a really interesting area for them. There's some buzz and people are poking around on this. But I think AI agents could really power that orchestration of that sort of that Frankenstack, to use a negative term. But the point is, there's nobody that does it all, so you have to do this.
Well, there's an interesting tension because we'll hear vendors talk to us about avoid the Frankenstack. And actually, this is another one where the big agencies, this is the trend that we saw from Shop Talk, Horizon, Publicis, are all trying to come up with their own holdco identity, a core ID, or whatever Horizon's going to call their ID. I'm assuming the rest of them are going to come up with an ID. What does that look like? Because those are the guys who are trying to do another monolithic platform,
on
right?
the other end of the spectrum. And this is a media company effectively building retail media and having to build the stack. Agencies are doing the same things. Wait, we can do this ourselves? Like the identity situation as it opens a door. Like you need help. Brands need help being able to stitch identity together. So they can do that as well as other people can do that. Why not? And Publicis has shown the market that you can buy and develop tech assets that help an agency business, and it's not as competitive and it's more complementary than you would think. So we're seeing a lot of agency activation and interest in building their own tech, having their own data, and it shows up in different ways. It depends on the core. We call it how do we empower their special sauce? How do we take what they have and allow them to build interesting differentiated businesses? Some of them are really good at measurement, so they're leaning into the measurement use case. Others are trying to build an identity platform. Others are looking at creative as a differentiation, all the little elements that come into there. So we're having really interesting conversations with agencies as well about how do we help them build differentiated tech, proprietary tech and data capabilities and be able to be more principled in value creation for their advertiser clients. There can still be transparency in that process. It doesn't mean you have to, it's about taking margin, but it's about can they be more directly involved with giving what the brand wants and not outsourcing that to somebody in the middle again.
Going back to Walmart Connect Mexico, are you all providing managed services for them in terms of powering their managed services? Because I think that's one of the big questions with retail media networks is the retailers aren't ad tech people, they're not ad serving specialists, they're not media people, and how do they build these organizations? And so are you all trying to fill that gap in terms of how do you support and service the advertising base?
Yeah, not for Walmart Mexico. They felt like they could do it themselves, and they're doing a great job. A lot of other retailers are looking at that. So I think it's important for us. We show up with flexible and customizable tech, but also service levels. So if they want outsourced media management, we can do that. That's something Infillion has done forever. But I think that dynamic is one where it's just you kind of have to show up where they are and show up and help them grow that business. I think what we're seeing is that particularly in offsite media and sort of audience extension use cases for them, which is a big opportunity for all the retail media networks, even Walmart Mexico, they're still figuring this out, that they haven't fundamentally built the relationships and the tech yet. So it's very much in transition to being able to be relevant even to their endemic brands, the CPGs they work with, to get access to brand and performance budgets. They're still figuring that all out. So it's just a hodgepodge of approaches. Some people are working with their media agencies. Some people are outsourcing effectively to Trade Desk and Yahoo. Others are hiring salespeople and going and doing it themselves. I think most should invest in building their own tech and having their own sales. It's nice to get money from data sales and audience extension, but we're in a media business. You make more money, you have more value when you're actually involved with the media itself. So anyway, back to Walmart Mexico, what we do is we built a self-service interface for their agency clients. So they sell to the agencies, and then they go into a version of MediaMath that's bespoke to Walmart Mexico, and they load the campaign, and they can tweak it, they can manage it, they can pull data out. So it's a very familiar environment, comparable to what they're seeing in a Trade Desk or a DV360, but it's Walmart's. It's Walmart's DSP.
Does that ever get to a place where they actually collaborate with Walmart US?
The corporate relationships is fascinating.
Yeah.
They give a lot of independence, Walmart does, to US and Canada and Central America and Mexico.
Yeah.
They share a lot of best practices, but the different regions have a lot of autonomy about who they work with and how they do things.
It's interesting to me because I think about this because a lot of the challenges when I was at Quotient was how do you get the smaller retailers to have either a national footprint or to work together in some way without having problems with the data or the competitiveness. And I wonder, where does the model come from? And we all thought it was going to be that somebody's going to create a great self-service interface and then every agency is going to use it. And it now sounds like you guys are building those agency-friendly platforms. Maybe Trade Desk has one, but it's not every channel. You guys are trying to do more channels. But I look at it and see, okay, do you guys start to band together all of your customers into a network, or is that too far?
We're early in this journey.
Yeah.
Only a year and change.
I think retail media is early in this journey. I think it's more of an open-ended question of where does retail media go, especially as smaller and more regional retailers show up. Right. And this is a big question that it's brought up. Kevel is pushing programmatic standards, trying to allow people to trade across retailers.
And like that approach.
What's old is new again, right? Potentially. Do you start to see retailers start banding together so they have a bigger established footprint?
I see no reason why that version of the 2010 programmatic story is not repeated in this case, where the ad servers of the world, the Kevels, Codys, the Locos of the world, come like an SSP in a programmatic context. The retail media networks are like publishers.
Right. No, I agree. The retailers are publishers in this case.
And they just show, but in our we're moving in context in the DSP programmatic landscape. And then that would then potentially open up a lot of like passive, if you will, demand and buying power into their portals. And I think that's probably the next big game. Like you have the Skies and PackViews of the world doing this, but really focused on like PLAs and search and on-site.
Right.
Like but what about display? What about, and honestly, there's a lot of demand that they are never going to get. They just don't have those relationships. Like, why not a MediaMath emerge as like a source of all kinds of programmatic media, inclusive of retail media? And you could transact that via a RTB environment, like,
right?
Or it could just be like basically a PG buy that's an IO that gets loaded in their system and runs, right?
Yeah, I think on a lot of these retailers, maybe Walmart Mexico is different, but a lot of them, the inventory is small, and so it's tough to not say, a PG buy or something like that would make them a little more sense.
Yeah. The other thing is we've talked too is that for retail media, one of the challenges in getting it to grow has been how do you enable the media agency buyer? The media agencies are not transacting retail media in large part today. No. And I think that's been an interesting miss, partly because I think the retailers don't understand the media landscape and don't realize that 80% of media spend is controlled by media agencies. Right. And as they want to move and generate more media dollars, it's go to where the dollars are. Yeah. And the reality is, to this point, if you're going to sell to these large agencies, you have to have large reach, you have to have large avails. And so I think that's part of the story here of what unlocks the media landscape for the retailers.
Right. Yeah, I think they're not going to stop doing what they do now. The measurement is beautiful, but I see this possibility for them to sell like full funnel, upper funnel, mid funnel advertising through to an agency that does this all the time, but then ends with a real conversion moment. And these endemic brands, that's why they do everything they do. And I think that's why everybody's excited about the potential. Is right now they're just, all the retail media networks are really focused at the bottom of the funnel and focused on really the trade marketing spend from endemic brands. So they're right where they should be, but think about opening up all the other types of budget from the same brands and moving up and starting to drive awareness. And then think about like eventually the non-endemics and all you can do with that. But there's like, for me, it's like, I feel like it's emerging like very clear next steps. It's just a little messy because everybody's in a different place in this investment paradigm. Like a lot of them don't have that sales team that can have that.
Well, honestly, I think one of the questions we have as you look at publishers, open web publishers, and they have the upper funnel sales teams and the brand sales teams. Are they natural allies to the retailers, and are we going to see more of these partnerships?
That's interesting.
And does an Infillion enable that at some point? That's, I think, one of the questions of as we talk to in retailers and publishers. I'm always like, you guys, why aren't you all working together? Like, it's a natural peanut butter and chocolate moment.
But why that federation never came to? I don't think it ever fully realized itself in programmatic. I think there are friction points. I do think there is an opportunity, and we think there's an opportunity for us to play a role of creating federation like around non-competitive retail media networks, being able to share data, be able to bundle media. I think who's doing that now? Is it Uber and Instacart?
That's a really interesting piece of news that came up where basically, I don't know if you saw this, but Uber said, you know what? Instacart's going to be better at monetizing Uber Eats. We'll let them do it. And I think those types of partnerships we were talking about.
Retailer to retailer, which I think is interesting, your point. And then I think I was talking with another OG ad guy, right, Patrick, over at Meredith Dash, and was asking, what are they seeing? And are they starting to try to recruit and partner with RMMs? And he's like, we have a whole RMM team. I think you as Infillion, as a tech provider, to your point of enabling these federations, you're have an opportunity to help orchestrate or enable those, and that sharing, because it's going to be largely through your data as a platform. That's probably the common link here. And so it'll be interesting to see how you are the matchmaker to an extent between these different.
Yeah, we don't want to develop AI features on our platform that make our platform more awesome. We want to be open to AI, capabilities of others to be able to connect the web of all the things that are happening. And this is a good example. Like, we could play a major role in orchestrating connections between all these places and advertising demand and supply.
Yeah, I mean, are you saying that you're almost, I don't know if you're doing all of these things, but you're almost like an alternative to an AWS or GCP for the retailer?
Yeah, I was at Accenture for a couple of years between my ad tech journeys. And that's one of the reasons that I'm here, is I think there's an opportunity for us to show up more like AWS or GCP and take these components and build it to what they need with the scalability behind it and the ability to really do some big stuff eventually. But in the moment, we just got to make it work for this retailer XYZ or this local media company that's building something. Dotdash Meredith's Decipher business is fascinating. What they're doing with that is amazing. A publisher really embracing technology to drive differentiation and actually launch ad products and market. And so anyway, there's a lot of this going on. Every time I turn around, I'm like, there's another company building a media business, right?
And we started to do this on our podcast, is to see, okay, we were at Shop Talk a month ago, now we're at Possible. Are you seeing any sort of changes? And then we can talk about it. I have another one, which is about the fact that nobody seems to know each other at this conference. There's the vendors and there's the brands, and they're not really friends from a long time. So that could be an opportunity where you start to mingle and new opportunities. But what do you think's gone on since we saw you at Shop Talk? What's percolating?
I think part of the Dotdash Meredith, that's not an accident. Their announcement around Decipher and launching their own ad product, basically a DSP-ish business.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. It's like validation that we believe there's a lot of different types of companies that are going to be looking to build their own media business on the backs of technology we can provide or others. I see that validating. And I think we've been seeing a lot of continued interest from the agents community in this. The retail media, it's just a march. They're going. It's just a process of getting engaged and talking. I can't say I've seen much more change in the few months between now and then, other than I do think there's been a little bit more fleshing out of the AI agent story for the industry. You're starting to see publisher-focused use cases and advertiser and agency-focused use cases. You're seeing people think about automation versus orchestration versus value creation, transformation. So I'm following all those stories closely because I feel like it might not look like it's happening, but in 2, 3, 4 years, we're going to wake up and we might be doing this business entirely differently.
Yeah. Carrie Masters this week had something about saying MCP might be the way where a retailer could share data with a lot of different vendors quickly without a lot of danger of losing their protecting the data. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. I think the technology is way ahead of security standards or other things that we set up. You forget about all the work we've done over the last 20, 25 years making the internet actually fairly safe and secure. This is a remaking of it. So I think that will be probably will slow people down more than anything else. Making sure that Albertsons or CVS or Walmart, they don't lose their data in some weird way because they didn't understand this protocol properly and it got exposed, and they aren't going to move quickly on that. But some others will, and then 3 or 4 years maybe they'll rethink how they connect the dots in the middle, right? We all have to be on our toes. It's a lot of buzz, but it's a legitimate buzz in my mind.
It's funny to me in terms of you're talking about the march of retail media and getting all these parties to work together. For us OG guys, it's like seeing the rise of first-gen ad networks all over.
Yeah, they're just ad networks.
They are. It's Eric Seifert's comment, everything's an ad network, and retailers are definitely building or trying to build networks. And to your point of them trying to realize how do you work together, publishers figured this out 20 years ago. It's kind of surprising that retailers aren't paying as much attention to that history. And I'm sure when you sell or talk to them about why don't you want to work with other people, and are they receptive to that story?
I think it's just it's organizations are people, and people learn and have a history, right? I was at Tribune back in the 2000s,
right?
And even though they were not programmatic, and I was at LATimes.com particularly, and they were just figuring all this digital advertising thing out, they've been selling advertising forever. So their DNA was as an advertiser, an advertising business as a publisher. The retailers don't have that DNA. They have no intuition about this. And they've hired good people, but inevitably some part of the organization doesn't get it.
It's sort of the top of the organizations not being as familiar. Do you feel like they're beginning to listen to the people who have experience as you walk in and start telling the story?
100%. Look at Walmart's doing. That's a hardcore real retailer, and they have pivoted hard into their DSP business side. That is a big pivot. It's a very impactful one, and it has a lot of dangers. They have a lot of data and a lot of risk to their supply chains and their direct relationships. So yeah, they figured it out, and so will all the others players out there. Like they will. It's too good of an amplifier of what they do. Because one, you're going to make more money at a very high margin compared to your core business, but also you're also actually in the business of creating a different experience with your consumers, which ultimately they do get, right? Like they get that. Like,
well, it's also getting credit for teaching consumers, giving them avenues for discovery to new channels and line extensions and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that is not really credited in the right way yet.
no. Yeah, because they sit where they sit, right? Like, people couldn't connect the dots. Now we can connect the dots. It's interesting. I just think that they're just a little, like, they're not even teens yet in this journey. They're like my 11-year-old, like, sentient creatures moving around doing things, and you're like, think that they can act independently. I don't want to speak badly of my retail media friends, but it's just like you can't move faster than you can move. Like you just trip then at some point. But the level of sophistication is unending. Like it is a march toward this end state. And I think the first tranche of the big retailers, the Best Buys and the Krogers and the others, they're now at a point where they've done the first era and they're closing that out and they're moving formally into the next. And then you have the next tier of retailers that are just starting to figure this out and might be able to skip some of the growing pains and go directly into a better model. But I don't see any reason why this couldn't reach to almost any retailer. It just becomes more an out-of-box solution, a network for a network, right? Like the ability just to plug in and federate this. I think that's the real future. But why wouldn't you want to make a little bit extra money and enhance your relationship with your brands and be able to like prove your value in the ecosystem? Like I think it's a little bit inevitable, but we'll see how it all plays out. It'll be fun. This is my reason I'm back in this space, because like it feels similar to 20 years ago, but it's different.
It's old as new.
Yeah.
Kind of concept. No, it's interesting seeing, are we going to learn from the lessons from 20 years ago or 15 years ago and do things better and slightly different as a result? You look at the first versus third-party data.
Yeah.
I think third-party data is largely gone. I think even with the Google maintaining the third-party cookie, I'm not sure there's really anybody using that data anymore, realistically, which is probably why they maintained it.
Well, there are a lot of dumb bidders out there. But
yes, there are dumb bidders out there.
that see a cookie and all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is way more valuable than it was before.
Oh boy. Whereas, because what's interesting with the retailers is it is a movement into first-party data at scale, and I think that's one of the interesting aspects of this. And as the industry moves towards first-party data in mass, because you have these retailer relationships and it gives you attribution and bottom funnel and all sorts of interesting things. And like the first-party revolution outside the walled gardens, to me, is what gets interesting about retail media. Like, we're finally going to have first-party data across the open web. Yeah. I don't think people truly understand the impact of what that could be, and I don't quite understand necessarily all the use cases that emerge, but that's, to me, one of the fascinating things is we have liberated first-party data to an extent, or made it enabled or powerful or extended, or whatever terms you want to use, and that is an interesting change I don't think we understand yet.
And that's on somebody with a retailer and retail media background. We've been looking to liberate first-party data so you can do better merchandising. Because that was the problem with the web, was that, and I think Ethan from Placer AI did a really good job of saying, if you go to warbyparker.com and you're searching for glasses and they have a carousel that shows hats on it, whatever, are you going to click on that? You go to a Warby Parker store and they have a hat stand, are you going to try one of them on? It's a totally different thing. How do you make sure that you credit all those places in the right way? If you don't unlock the first party data to move outside of .com, you're not getting all those signals.
Yeah.
So
I think you're dead right. This first party revolution is just beginning, and there's a lot of pockets, and the middle got the rents in the beginning because they had critical mass, enormous amounts of first party data, and Meta and Amazon and Google could make it work. Now it's more disaggregated, and you've got a very advanced technology and increasingly AI driven that can make sense of what is like dozens of different pockets of first party data, but orchestrate that appropriately. That's powerful. And then that pushes, again, value creation out of the middle to the fringes, right, to the edges where really it should be.
One of the things that this is really getting into the weeds of the ad tech world, which is the thing I think we screwed up as ad tech in the first gen of programmatic was, and even browsers, was using cookies in the browser instead of server side. Server to server allows for much better first party data integration and sharing, and effectively the walled gardens, that's what they do. They're effectively server side first party targeting. And do you think we're going to be able to see this sort of as you think about your product and MediaMath and the integration of that, and Truex was a great supply side tech, so it's interesting with Infillion is both supply side and buy side tech. Do you see maybe finally the rise of server side targeting and server side data enablement and ID resolution, and because that solves a lot of these problems?
It does. It's funny. I was in the Google Analytics world for a long time. At Google, I managed that partner program, and then I was
then you understand, right? If you work at Google, you understand server side.
And I was CEO of a small agency who was reselling Google Analytics. I have intimate understanding of this, and that's the right way to go. I think the way I would say answer that is like we're seeing server-side integrations already effectively with things like clean rooms and the way that identity graphs work and these days, and how you access them and connect the dots, and things like customer match from Google, the ability to connect directly data tables and understand that. I agree with that. It'd be interesting. I don't know exactly. I haven't gamed out how that would work across the open web and how everybody would do that. But I know that every analytics provider worth their salt is pushing server-side integrations right now.
Yeah. Are you saying, Todd, that more people are going to be logged in the Trade Desk way, or is it?
No, it's not. It's nothing to do with Trade. Trade Desk way is actually browser side. It has nothing to do. There's no server-side aspect to that, and it's more. It has to be more at the sort of the ad management layer in terms of. Instead, the way that ad serving works now is that your browser makes a call to the ad server, and your ad server returns to the browser. Instead of, if it were server to server, the ad actually gets loaded into the web server and then presented to the browser. There's no call from your computer to ad server. It's happened all behind the scenes, and that's the way the walled gardens all work. Yeah. And so it means it's how you get around ad blocking fundamentally. Data resolution happens, again, server side, so you can't be blocked. And so this is, again, why the walled gardens have done was they're effectively server-side ad targeting and delivery. And so that's the way that I think it has to work. Fundamentally, so if you're a retailer and the minute the person shows up, you can then, the identity resolution starts with a login. Once you have that, you can do all server-side from that point on. Yeah. And so that's what the retailers can enable. The publishers never figured out logged in, how to get someone to log in.
But I guess what I'm saying is CTV is logged in generally.
Correct. CTV, streaming services are logged in experience, and that's one of the things. So video ad serving, interestingly enough, has always been server side.
Yeah.
VAST is a server side, that's video ad serving standard, ad serving technology, but it's the VAST standard is the video ad serving, and that's always been server side, which has always been interesting is that there's this little pocket of the internet, advertising, for 10 years has been server side, that's been video. And it's worked, and it's part of the reason video ad serving has worked really well, and I think works well with retail media, is it is server side. And it's really easy to do the integrated logged in connection and identification. And so we can get the same thing across the open web, and retailers are logged in. PLA ads can be done via logged in identity resolution. So this is where it gets interesting and where we can enable this more broadly. Again, you unlock the open web.
Yep.
I would like to see the open web saved.
Yeah.
I fundamentally think strategically and valuable. I like publishers. I've worked with you. You and I both worked. I've been a publisher in the past.
That's why we all started down this road. It was fun to work with publishers, doing clever things.
I think this was a great discussion, and I think you gave us our first question that we're going to go ask Attain in our next session about how you're doing measurement of these types of campaigns on a first-party basis. So, thank you, Jeremy, for having us here in your suite, and I'm interested in keeping in touch and understanding what happens at Cannes and what happens.
It's going to be an interesting year. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how this all evolves. It's all moving so fast, and we're excited to be part of it.
Very good. Well, thank you. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you.